Now, you start with a broad spectrum of free will like this. This is your free will. You can move around from there, you can do what you need to do. As Dante said, my will and my desires turn evenly on a wheel, driven by the same love that moves the sun and other stars. Now, this is a saying that can be used to justify debaucherous behaviour, of course, and that's not what I'm doing. But let's say that same love that drives the sun and other stars is here. Right now, when you make your free will choices, and you make these Christ-influenced positive choices to do what you need to do. The longer you spend plugged into the digital media with all its advertising, telling you to eat junk food and so on and so forth, this starts to get smaller. You get hooked on junk food. Your body impulses are louder than the love that turns the sun and other stars. You become addicted to pornography. It becomes smaller again. You become addicted to mindless entertainment. Your flesh gets louder. Your free will corridor gets smaller and smaller.
Great Spirit, I have had it. Bring me back to the nomadic way of weaving through the damage. Mindful, stay mindful. Great Spirit for...
Hey guys, I have some time and I'm feeling quite alert this morning after some meditation, and I want to talk about free will. Free will is a peculiar thing because many of us presume we all automatically have free will. And I would say that most of us can achieve a state of having free will, but in the most part in the West, most of us do not have free will. You see, actually the reason I wanted to talk about this was a frustration I have with the false reality that is fed to people via such media sources as YouTube. Many YouTubers live a holiday lifestyle with no responsibilities. 99% of humans don't do that, can't do that. 99% of humans wouldn't do that because they'd rather take on a responsibility, whatever that responsibility may be. Maybe it's caring for Mother Earth, maybe it's caring for children as I do, or both as I do. Maybe it's just caring for animals, maybe it's just caring for your family, maybe it's just caring for the sick, maybe it's just caring for the elderly. Maybe it's carrying a message into the world that needs to be heard. We take on responsibilities. We don't mindlessly devour time and then share with others that this is definitely a nice way of life to promote. All the while presenting something unachievable to most. So this is a false reality that's fed to us even via the free media. Now, of course, the mainstream media feeds us that false reality too. And this ties into free will. Because if you take a human being, imagine an image, if you can, of a human being sitting watching the television. Then they have an awakening and go, whoa, I've been fed lies via this mainstream media. If you tell them to go and sit in the forest, their anatomy, their physiology, their chemistry is programmed to sit in front of the television. It's programmed to accept that digital light, the sound, and to be very still while it does so. This is how it's been trained and programmed from birth to receive information. So you take that sitting person away from media, tell them to go to the forest and to meditate. Eventually they'll walk back from the forest and plonk themselves right down in front of their laptop and absorb the other free media. Now the problem is then, where's the foundation of the message coming through that free media? What if the person you're watching has their foundations predominantly set in digital light? What if the digital light they've been absorbing has its foundations set in digital light or wrong intentions? What if the person making the video you're watching doesn't go to the natural source of light, doesn't sit in nature and allow the natural angles of light carrying the photons to bring messages and ideas to them, the angels as it were? What if they don't do that? What if they recycle the digital media? Well, then we have a problem. Because those who wake up from this media plug straight into that media, and few and far between people within inside the digital media are presenting anything that's influenced from the original reality. It's just like the Matrix. You're plugged into the Matrix, you're plugged out of the Matrix. What you want to do is bring something back from the unplugged state to those who are plugged in to awaken those as well. So where does free will come into that? Well, digital media destroys free will. Many other things do as well, but I believe more than any other digital media has that occurrence on us. That's why it's so massively used to impact us with regards to our life choices, lifestyle choices and concepts. It's even used to force us into a state of fear. Now, you start with a broad spectrum of free will like this. This is your free will. You can move around from there, you can do what you need to do. As Dante said, my will and my desires turn evenly on a wheel, driven by the same love that moves the sun and other stars. Now, this is a saying that can be used to justify debaucherous behaviour, of course, and that's not what I'm doing. But let's say that same love that drives the sun and other stars is here. Right now, when you make your free will choices, and you make these Christ-influenced positive choices to do what you need to do. The longer you spend plugged into the digital media with all its advertising, telling you to eat junk food and so on and so forth, this starts to get smaller. You get hooked on junk food. Your body impulses are louder than the love that turns the sun and other stars. You become addicted to pornography. It becomes smaller again. You become addicted to mindless entertainment. Your flesh gets louder. Your free will corridor gets smaller and smaller. You get addicted to alcohol. You get addicted to drugs. Again, the media promotes these lifestyles to us. Let's be honest, the media promotes satanic events and satanic ideologies. The misuse of substance and the misuse of sex in an immoral sense, in an objectifying sense. It reports on the events which are satanic and the dark wars and so on and so forth. And it promotes the things which will lead you into a state of fear and darkness as well. So as you watch this media and eventually you get hooked on drugs and alcohol, your whole body chemistry is so loud and your flesh is so loud that your free will, driven by the same love that moves the sun and other stars, becomes such a narrow corridor that very few people can find it. Now, I was once at a position where my free will corridor was just minute and I couldn't find my way back into it. And I had to get right deep back into the middle of myself. And it took time. But once I did, it started to grow. It started to grow. And my flesh, which is the outer parts of my hand here, got quieter and quieter and quieter until that love that drives the sun and other stars, that can allow the true influence of my original source of self to have its ability to choose free will, influenced by embracing the teachings and the mind of Christ and not that of the Luciferian doctrine, or that which we call negative, the carnal mind, the lower self, that which we know is wrong. My free will became so loud, and my connection to it, my connection to the original source that I was born to be, as our children have, became so clear and so easy to walk into that God could start to direct me. Because I could take no thought for my life. And when I can take no thought for my life and my free will corridor is open like this, I can actually do what I need to do in the world. But if it's shut down by addiction to food, addiction to alcohol, addiction to substances, addiction to digital media, addiction to mindless entertainment, I've got this little corridor of free will I can work within. But the rest of the time, my body's chemistry, which is just a chemical factory, is so loud telling me, oh, I need to go and get that cigarette or that drink of alcohol. I need to go and watch that movie, that I can't even find this place anymore. And that's why you've got to shut down the flesh. That's why you've got to crucify yourself. Now, I don't want everyone to go and nail themselves to a tree, as I've said, but your 5 senses, that's why he's wounded 5 times, must die in meditation. In fasting, in prayer, or endurance exercise, or the silence of your mind. And when you can do that, you can swim in this pool of life because you have no thoughts fragmenting it. Alan Watts once said, life is like a slippery fish. And if you try to catch a fish with your hands, it gets away. But if you throw a net on it, you can catch it. But the net, the holes in the net allow you to start counting the sections of the fish. And that calculus is the beginning of the problems we face on the planet. Because we try to catch life with a net and we start to segregate little bits and pieces and bits and pieces. And these little bits and pieces that we segregate also can be our addictions, and it just becomes this little bit at a time. And what you really want to be doing is fighting the slippery fish, because that's when you're alive. That's when you're living. When you give it a go without the net. Give it a go without your carnal mind. Give it a go with a massive corridor for your free will. And without the influence of too much digital media. This is a false light reality I speak to you from now, but the foundation of what I say comes from hours and hours and hours of natural light practice. I bring back the messages I receive from God in that message into that light, into this digital media. Now, it's not to abuse and say terrible things about the digital media, because it's a powerful tool that we all need. YouTube in itself can guide a human being using synchronicities, because God is in it all. But what we have to realize is that this is a powerful tool. And I pray that I do justice to the power I have by being able to manipulate and control light and the audio you receive from me today, right now. Because many know that power and it burns in their hands, and instead of trying to make humanity as awakened and powerful as they try to make you as weak as possible so they can control you. They don't want you to awaken to the promised land, which is the east or the right hemisphere. They want you locked in the carnal mind, which is the left. You see it with your education system. Store it in your left, store it in your left. If you question it with your right, you fail. So those who are obedient storers and regurgitators become our leaders. Left-brained. They don't lead from the promised land. And when you're left-brained, you are weakened to the desires of the flesh, and your corridor of free will is so minute that anyone who's controlling anything outside of there, anything on the outside of these fingers now, is your flesh. Whatever's controlling that flesh has control of you. So all of the companies with the advertising, the addiction, the chemicals they put in your food, they've got you until you make that wider. And you only make that wider by fighting. And you only actually are able to fight by being as still and peaceful as you can be. Not passive, not letting the world run riot around you, not focusing on the negative because you don't want to create more of it and all this new age nonsense that we've been fed. You see a problem, focus on it to fix it. But you've got to be peaceful in your demeanor as you do. You've got to have faith and trust in God's ability to fix these problems. Because walking into it without faith means that you'll walk in and your emotions will rise and you'll get angry and you won't be as efficient as a human being as you can be. Because we humans are not efficient unless we are silent enough to hear the instructions that God and his angelic force of angles of light and photons has to give us. And if we can receive that, then we are at our most efficient. Without it, we're efficient, but not as efficient. And we can't solve problems without that. Massive problems we can't do. So as I always say, be careful of the light you consume. And be sure, absolutely certain, with regards to how much free will do you actually have. Because as soon as you reach for a cigarette, that's not your free will, that's your flesh. As soon as you reach for the pornography, that's not your free will, that's your flesh. As soon as you go out and drink, even though you know you don't really want to, but your friends are doing it, that's your flesh. That's not your free will. That is not the part of you that is driven by the same love that moves the sun and other stars. Because the same love that moves the sun and other stars is turning that light, and that is the reality you can be plugged into. But predominantly that love is not inside the digital media. The very core of the digital media, the driving force of that is quite the opposite. The driving force of the matrix is quite the opposite to that love that drives and moves the sun and other stars. So what is driving you? If you're in your flesh, it's not that love. But you can get back to it, and you can make your corridor of free will as wide as it needs to be. And when you do that, you become a sovereign human being. And it's nearly impossible at that point for that digital media and this targeted ways and means of controlling our flesh to ever have an effect on you again. Because you've slayed your lion. It's done, it's down, it's out the way. And you can push on in your pursuit of God and service to others. God bless, guys. Bye. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe, as it really helps us to grow the channel and with it help more children here in Tanzania. Also, don't forget you can support our work by sharing with children in crisis here, be it sharing for a particular need or even sharing one-on-one support for education, housing, food and medical care. It can be done for as little as the cost of a cup of coffee a week back in the West after all. Just visit www.sharetanzania.co.uk to find out more. Lastly, remember you can also support us via Patreon, www.patreon.com/featherstail, and help keep us here in Tanzania to continue our work. The links for the website and for the Patreon are in the description box of this video. Love and light, guys. See you soon.